So yeah, let's go. Thank you all for joining for the very first community call, community committee. We're super excited about this. It's an initiative we wanted to run for a pretty long time, and we were just super slow. And I apologize here to put it in place. So we have a pretty heavy agenda today. So I will start with right away with the context and why we are doing this meeting with like people part of the core team, but also community members. First of all, is I think in our the first goal for us is to be more transparent. I think it's something we were not super transparent with V4, and we want to change our approach with V5. And we also want to avoid what happened with V4, where I think the community was not involved enough, and especially the people who know pretty well the product are involved on a daily basis. I think the community can really help us to identify blind spot. You can really also help us commenting, testing the alpha, reading the RFC, challenging the technical choices who are being made. And also, I think it's a great space and to learn about Strapi V5 and any other major versions that will come, and also being able to that then spread that knowledge within the community, which is something what's clearly missing with V4, and we don't want to repeat that with V5. So today we will try to share as much as we can with you about V5. So before we show you like the progress, what have been done, let's start maybe with why did we come up with V5. The first thing is that we had to introduce new breaking changes for the simple reason that the mostly requested feature is draft and publish, and we can't support that feature without introducing breaking change on V4. So that's why we need V5. Just for this feature, we need it. And the second mostly requested feature is content history or content versioning. It depends on the how people call this one. And those two features, like, yeah, we need to change the database structure. So we have to do the V5 for this reason. We also think that one of our mistakes with V4 was that the scope was too wide, and we maybe need to break more often, but also simplify the migration story each time it happens. So we prefer to break more often, to have more often major version of Strapi, but ease the migration because we know how difficult it was to migrate from V3 to V4 because we almost changed everything. And also we want to make sure that Strapi is keeping up with the new technology trend, and we'll keep attracting developers and enterprise to use Strapi because the open source product is mostly funded by the company, the commercial open source software. So we need to keep attracting enterprise to fund the open source project, and we just want to be like one of the top open source projects available on GitHub. So for that, that's why we'll talk about TypeScript and Vite in a few minutes. But yeah, those are the main reasons why we are working on V5 right now. With V4, we did a lot of mistakes, and we apologize many times, but those are the main learnings, and I want to reshare them today with you, like the community members, but also with the people who are part of the core team. When we developed V4, we were only 8 developers, and one mistake we did is that we stopped maintaining V, and we are not doing that with V5 and V4. We are still maintaining V4 while developing V5. So it's something that changed, but also the team is way bigger now. We have more than 30 core engineers working on at Strapi right now. As I told you, the scope was too wide. So it's better and easier to work with a more narrow scope, even if it means releasing more often, major versions more often. The migration was, let's say, a nightmare. It was super difficult to migrate, and we are well aware of that. And with this new version, we know we can make version upgrades a no-brainer if we have built-in migrations, and this is exactly what we're doing with V5. The documentation was not ready as well, which is an important part in the migration process to have the documentation. So we have a documentation which was not fully up to date on before, but a lot of parts were missing, and we didn't dedicate enough time on it. So this time we are writing the documentation in parallel, and we also add a few extra weeks before releasing and communicating about V5. And the last thing, it is what we're doing today. We just clearly lacked of communication with you, the community members. and we were not involved enough, and we did not involve you enough in the process to review the RFC, to have meeting with us, to have discussions, to ask questions, to challenge our choices. And we are trying to fix that right now. About V5, to make sure that the scope is super clear for all of us, this is like the scope of V5. So we'll introduce a new feature called draft and publish. Lucas will show a demo of the feature, like some prototypes. In a few minutes, the entire code base, or almost most of it, I think Alex could validate this, but almost all the code base will be converted into TypeScript. We're going to fix 30 major issues, because some issues that we are having, or even critical issues, they need breaking changes. So like V5 is the opportunity to fix those. We are replacing Webpack with Vite as a new bundling system. We're also reverting back or like updating the content API format. That's something that didn't like reach the satisfaction level we hope for when we introduce it. So we will try to have a simpler one for V5. The new plugin API will improve the developer experience. So we will try to pre-bundle the plugins and also have an auto-reloading system, which is going to offer much better developer experience when developing plugins. And also we are going to introduce new front-end APIs to replace in some way the injection zones, which are great, but the migration can be difficult when you use them. So those new front-end APIs are aiming to fix that and to offer as well a better developer experience. So that's what we plan to do with V5, and that's the scope, the fixed scope of it. I will let Alex, the CTO, talk a bit more about the public RFCs now.
5 minutes. Hello, everyone. Can you go on so I'll mention a few of the RFCs. So if you want to find them, they are on our GitHub, Strapi/RFCs. We have a bunch of them. The big ones I'm going to talk about are the DB and the Content API ones, mostly. So DB sides, as you know, we are working on Draft and Publish, and to do the new version of Draft and Publish that someone explained in the console, in the chat, sorry, already, it's to support having one draft and one published version at the same time, which isn't something possible at the moment. So it means having multiple versions of one, what we call document at the same time in DB. So we need to change the DB a bit, and we are adding a common ID for all those entries to know that it's a common document. And we'll also do some changes in different areas, mostly addressing the issues we have with length of the identifiers, table names too long, join table names too long, those kind of things, column names also. You can have a look at the RFC in more details if you want. Yeah, and the other one is the Content API one. So that's something that in V4 was very open. We had the V4 version of the Content API / GraphQL. When I say Content API, it's both REST and GraphQL. That had a lot of nesting of the data. So you probably all remember data attributes, those kind of things, and being nested in relations, which was very powerful in terms of flexibility for us. But in the end, we didn't use them as much as we thought we would use them. So we're actually going to offer a much simpler version from now on in V5. So you will have something that resembles what Oren is sharing, much more flat to access. We just keep the data meta approach, and we just manage reserved words with a more strict approach. So we will have a bunch of reserved words that people just can't use to plan for the upcoming features that we will want to implement that will require those reserved words. You will see the different options in the RFCs, and why we choose option 1 is explained in the comments, in the pull request if you want to get more details. And I'm going to stop there and pass the mic to Josh, who will talk a bit about the design system and the plugin changes.
Yeah, so we're going to dissolve the helper plugin, which sounds very scary, but we're hoping not to remove any real functionality. We're going to simplify kind of how all our packages kind of build up on top of one another. So everything will be exported from Strapi instead, or rather a subpath of that package. So you don't need to install as many dependencies. And so that'll be the helper plugin. The design system's getting quite a lot of change. So we're moving to use Radix underneath, which we've already started slowly. And we're going to be breaking down our components so they're more composable. Because right now we find, even internally at Strapi, that when we're building things, we're kind of looking at adding more props to components to use, and when in reality, just more flexible composition would be more beneficial. And quickly going over the kind of 3 main topics. The plugin CLI, it's already experimental. There's 2 commands. So there's build and watch. So you're welcome to give them a go and feedback on GitHub if you find any issues. Maybe just highlight that you're using that command to help. Front-end APIs, yeah, so we're not getting rid of injection zones because that would obviously break a lot of things for everyone. We're adding some new APIs that we hope that we'll slowly transition to. So we'll add deprecation notices on the injection zones that these APIs are designed to replace. And then in terms of Vite, similar process. We're not getting rid of Webpack. We're just going to change our primary bundle to Vite. We're still looking if we could integrate it in V4. We're not 100% confident, but if we do, then it will be Webpack as the primary, and you can opt in to Vite. From V5, you'll opt into Webpack. So again, if you've got a Strapi app and you've got a very complicated custom Webpack plugin, you don't need to worry about it. But yeah, I think that covers all the front-end topics. So I'll hand back to her.
We'll have a Q&A section at the very end of the meeting, so I think most of you are right. Yeah, injections, yeah. My words were too strong, but saying that we're replacing Webpack and get rid of injection zone, but of course there will be
writing the questions down too for the end.
Yeah, let's talk a bit about the timelines. So I will be slow on this one because this is a pretty well-known slide internally, but for like the community members, it might be the first one you're seeing it. So this is actually like the big overview, the big timeline that we are following on a weekly basis to measure the progress on V5. So it's split into different squads. So each color means one squad, so group of people. We are halfway on the V4 TypeScript migrations. So yeah, we have done 50% of the job, and we will do and finish it until the stable release. So we aim to release Strapi V5 on March. That's the current estimation and deadline that we have. We'll do our best to meet it. Sorry. Then, as you can see, we just split like the huge piece of work into smaller pieces, updating the database structure, like develop the document services because we are introducing a document ID and a new layer. We not only have entities, but also documents now. And we are just getting started with the development and draft and publish the new feature we are announcing with V5. As you can see, we're also migrating IATN on TypeScript, but also it will be compatible with draft and publish, such as the review workflows, like role-based access control and audit logs. So all the existing features will work with draft and publish, which is a pretty big feature for us regarding the size of the product. And as you can see at the very bottom of this slide, we are also working, we have a squad working on the data transfer. So it includes a tool to simplify the migration from V4 to V5. And it also includes some part of the work will be done by the cloud. So it means that Strapi V5 will be supported on Strapi Cloud once it's going to be released. And we'll try to do our best to ease the migration for the people hosting V4 project on Strapi Cloud to migrate on Strapi Cloud, but with V5. That's pretty much it. Keep your questions for the end, and we will be able to come back on this slide if you have any question. So let's move to the demo with Lucas now.
Yeah, hello everyone. Nice to meet you, and I'm glad to be here. So I'm product designer at Strapi, and yeah, I saw that with you asked how was draft and publish really a new feature, because it's something that already exists, but you will see it's a bit different because it will give you more possibilities. So right now the issue we have with the draft and publish is that you can have a draft version and a published version at the same time. You have to choose basically. And so it makes a bit difficult for the content editors, content managers to update the content without, when publishing the entries. And also on our side, it prevents us to deliver like more effective collaboration features. Some are coming later, but like it will help us in the end to do these enhancements. Aurélien, you can go to the next slide. And yeah, very soon, I mean, once it's released, you will have the possibility to have those two versions at the same time. So basically, what is going to change is that you won't be worried about doing modifications on a draft without publishing the content live on your website. So it will be more, I would say, feel more safe. And also, if you need, the changes that you saved in the admin will be maybe reviewed by someone else before being published. So it's going to be very convenient. And there is 3 important things to say that it's a free feature, so everyone will benefit from it in every edition of the product, and will handle like all the features that comes with it. So relation, internationalization, review workflows, audit logs, and rollback access control. And now I'm gonna share my screen to show you the Figma prototypes. So you're gonna see how it looks basically. So you're supposed to see my screen right now.
Yep, all good.
Perfect. So yeah, it's a Figma prototype. So if there is things that change compared to the released version, like it's going to be just like wordings or things like that, no big changes. But yeah, here is a page that you certainly recognize. So internally we call it the edit view. And so to make you understand how it works, like let's picture yourself as the owner of an amazing website that lists the best restaurants in Berlin, and that you are currently looking at one of your restaurants of your website, and you see that it's already published. So it's live on your website, but you notice that the description is missing. So you can basically add it. It's super simple. And then you will have the possibility to publish the changes directly. So it's going to be live directly on your website, or you will be able to save the changes. And this is where it's interesting, is that when you save those changes made on a published version of your entry, you will enter a new state that is named modified. And so what it means, it's literally that you have an entry that is published, but on top of this, you have changes that are saved. And those changes, you can access them here. So you have everything on the fields. And then you certainly wonder what is behind this publish tab. In this publish tab, there is very basically what is published on your website. So that's why when you are in the modified state, you see that there is a difference between the published and the draft tab, because you didn't publish the description. You just did a change on the draft, but it's not published yet. It's gonna appear here, and so on your website only when you will click on publish the changes. So that's really the main thing to know about this new iteration of draft and publish. There is another flow that I would like to show you that will certainly save a lot of time to the content editors you are working with, is a flow to publish multiple locals at the same time. So basically, instead of doing this process, like multiply the number of locals you have in your app, you will be able to select the one that you want to publish. You will see their status, you will see if they are ready to publish or not. And you are going to be able to do everything at the same time. So of course, there is a lot of other flows and publishing, discard the changes, a lot of things like this. Tons of warning models that prevent you to delete content without being careful about it. But yeah, this is the most important thing to see right now. And I will come back. Maybe Aurélien, you can come back to the slides. And that's what I wanted to say. The current expected date, so what the date we are aiming right now is March 1st, 2024. And just before answering your question in the Q&A, I would like, in the next slide, say a big thank you to the community, because for this feature, we were really in contact with you. Maybe some of you went through those prototypes, but yeah, we did like 70 asynchronous tests, 15 demos and interviews, and we interviewed both a user that used the community edition and also users that use the enterprise edition. And yeah, I wanted to add this slide to thank you, because all the feedbacks we had were, I would say, applied in the mockups to make them better, or in the worst case, noted somewhere for future iterations. And so yeah, our feedbacks are really precious, and it really helps us to make the product better. So thanks a lot, because you represent a bit the whole community. And that's it for me.
Thank you, Lucas, for the demo. And now it's time for questions. I think we have 100 questions.
Yep, I have a list. Okay, so I'm going to go from the top throughout the whole presentation. So Bogie asked, how would reserved words work within plugins? I believe was referring to content type reserved words.
You are correct there, yes. Because if you have a plugin installed, right, it makes sense for a plugin to be able to reserve words as well. So you can't use words that a plugin is reserved.
So right now, we basically don't want to add a new solution in V5. That would be too much breaking change. So that's why we decided not to add something, adding too many prefixes or those kind of things. Long term, one thing that we would like to actually move the community and the ecosystem towards is having those kind of fields configurable by the user. So if they have a conflict, they will manage them themselves instead. So the idea is that we give control to the users instead of trying to find a way to avoid conflicts, which is, I mean, it's just adding too much overhead for the users, in our opinion.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Bobby asked, is users and permissions getting bumped? I believe he means in terms of timeline.
Bumped to V5, I guess.
Yeah. And
it's going to be migrated to V5.
Bobby, did you hear anything you wanted to add on that? I know you're a big users and permissions guy, so.
Yeah, we're kind of in maybe a unique use case in the sense that, you know, the back end for us, the Strapi admin panel, is really almost a developer only kind of range or zone. We tend to build our own front end for our users because our content is very unique. So the way that we would update that is somewhat unique as well. So rather than trying to customize Strapi internally, it's easier for us to build kind of our own React front end. And in doing so, we lean a lot on the users and permissions plugin to do a lot of the, you know, the REST API and that kind of stuff as well. So we've had to run into kind of some issues there where we want to be able to do, for example, multiple roles per user, kind of like how you do in the Strapi admin. You know, little features like that kind of have been talked about in the past, and kind of the thing I've always heard is that users and permissions is kind of being updated. So whenever it gets updated, that kind of stuff will maybe pull in, and then there'll be a little bit more feature parity between users and permissions plugin and the way that the Strapi admin handles users. Is there any comment to that?
Marco, I don't know if you are around. We have a few improvements that we want to plan. In terms of timeline, it seems a bit hard for us to reach it, to be completely transparent. So what we have in mind that I can share is opening the provider API, basically, so you can actually add your own providers without requiring to do like patch packaging or those kind of things. That's going to be one of the main things for you to have more control over the entire user and permission things. I don't think multi-roles is something that we have in mind at the moment, but to be confirmed by Marco if he is around.
I've actually tried to add it myself too. I think it is doable, but I'll discuss it with Marco. The only reason we never ended up actually merging it was because I never had time to finish the GraphQL side, so.
Gotcha. All right, thank you.
Cool. Next one was Bogey. Does this mean that the beta will have the old content API? I believe that was referring to the timeline slide.
I think it was answered in the chat now.
Yes, but it shows basically that the beta will happen at the start of the Node API, but not fully done yet. So can somebody explain how you guys are planning to do that then?
Yeah, so basically the content API changes, there are two parts of it. One is the impacts of the DB changes that will be reflected in the content API, and another part is the format itself. The format is like a transform function. This can wait because it doesn't depend on anything else. It's just a transform function. So we probably do that later on. But we'll still have a few impacts that we will have to pass in the alpha. Just it would be splitted into in the view, so it doesn't make sense for us to display it this way. But we will have part of it done for the alpha, obviously, so the API can still work.
Yeah, makes sense. All right, thank you.
Okay, next one. Data transfer, this is from Ant. Data transfer needs trunkification of data, otherwise it introduces issues with relations stored as JSON. Ant, you might need to clarify a little bit.
Right, so I came about the issue with the data transfer. I have this categorizer plugin that basically builds a relation based on a JSON schema. So I'm storing the IDs of the entities inside of that JSON. And wherever I do a data transfer, my IDs got shifted and I lose all the data in JSON basically. And this is kind of a painful issue because I wanted to do a breadcrumbs plugin, and I can basically it would allow you to somehow create a parent relation to anything by just typing the content type you wanna parent something to. But then I also have to store ID inside the JSON to make it work. Obviously, as soon as I get data transfer, all my IDs are gone. So yes, the question is, I don't know, we need some kind of polymorphic relation system that's kind of configurable, but it also should work with like data transfer, because you cannot store like IDs inside JSON objects. Anything on this front?
I think there's two sides to that question. If I had to sum it down, polymorphic relationship capability in V5 and the ability for custom fields to be able to use relationship types instead of simple.
Yes, I guess so.
Polymorphic sides, we will keep supporting them, basically. Nothing much to say other than that. For the more relation types in JSON overall, we don't support any relations. And if we talk components, right now it's just one way, and we don't plan to extend it to something else. We are thinking about a new type for later, but it's not going to happen in V5.
Yeah, well, I thought the data transfer needs some kind of way to hold IDs of the data while it's transferred, not to just increment IDs. But I really know.
Okay. Yeah, I've got you. Yes. So the new document, like a new database changes, one of them is the ID type is going to change. So we're not going to use integers anymore, which means that all the IDs across the database will be unique. And that means that we can actually do ID mapping much easier, and we'll use that to do the data transfer in a better way. The problem with like increments is you can't manage that easily, but with unique keys, we'll be able to actually do the diffs correctly between the two DBs. So that's something we will be able to build on top of the V5 changes. It's not part of V5 per se, but it will be part of the improvements we can build thanks to the V5.
It's cool.
Perfect. This one's from George. Could you consider an option in the UI of the admin to create templates for regex so that we can apply those on fields inside of collections? I believe he's referring to the advanced settings on fields, how we have to manually specify the regex syntax every time. Basically build a content type that stores common regex patterns.
Yeah, that's correct.
I think I did take this one, but yeah, there's nothing planned about this. I don't know, it's a very popular request or not, but on Kali, I didn't have no memories about a lot of people asking for this. It might need to be explored, yeah, Marco. Look at it. I will add this in my test.
I've talked with George about this before, Alex. Some common patterns are like, I don't think we have a URL field off the top of my head, but something like doing common URL regex patterns or stuff like that. Yeah, URL, email, etc.
Yeah, it would make sense.
This one's from Webist. For the features showcased in the demo, are they all community edition features as well as enterprise, or will aspects be gated to only enterprise? Sorry if I missed you explaining that. Had to take a phone call.
Pick this one slower, David, please. I was
basically, he's asking if anything showed in the demo was going to be an enterprise feature or community or 50-50 split.
For draft and publish? No, everything is going to be free. Draft and publish, everything. Cool. Every single part of it.
Also from Webist, draft and publish changes are fine, but where are conditional fields?
It's in the roadmap. So that's the good news, that it's in the roadmap for next year. We don't know when exactly. Like we have a lot of things like a nested component, dynamic zone within component, conditional fields, content history, comments. We have many initiatives that we would like to tackle next year. Now it's an order of priorities, what the community and the users need, and what also the business part of Strapi needs. So we are always balancing between both. But yeah, the good news is that it will be certainly done next year. Yeah, that's all I can share now. But yeah, we know it's a very common issue when using Strapi to not have conditional fields.
From Bobby, and this is a sentiment I also share. Can you speak about the migration and all thoughts and implementations?
Implementations of the migration?
Yeah.
Okay, so migration is like a topic that we are taking very seriously for this time around. Our DX, so Developer Experience Squad, is actually working on a migration tool for V5, dedicated to V5. So the idea is to provide a CLI experience to migrate your entire code. with step-by-step stuff that will apply, so code mods, those kind of things. The idea is also to take into account things that we try to detect and we just can't migrate them, to ask users to actually do manual steps when we detect them. So we'll do our best, obviously. It might not be a 100% perfect hit, but we'll try to detect all the files that we can and say if we can or not migrate, and ask you to actually do the migration yourself if we just can't make it. So that's the code part. We are not planning to change that much of your custom code. So there shouldn't be like a big revolution on that side either. We try to avoid making too many writing changes. On the DB side, which is probably where you are a bit more worried, right now the running hypothesis is that we will be able to migrate the DB directly at startup. So one of the main things we need to do is add that document ID colon and migrate some of the draft and publish stuff from the current V4 to the V5, so adding some states, those kind of things. So that's something that should be able to run at startup. The other part is the identifier length algorithm that we want to put in place. This one is still to be in research at the moment, so I can't really give more comments on that side. One thing that will be very, very important for us is to make sure that we clearly state that you need backups before starting your migrations, that you should make a backup, that you have a restore point available, those kind of things, and documenting, obviously, the procedure entirely on our documentation. And we'll do a lot of dog fooding, migrating one of our big apps, which is the Food Advisor demo app, and also probably the website during the alpha and beta when we are ready to test migrations. I think I shared everything I could on migrations.
Yeah, I added one thing just for the recording. This will be an in-place upgrade, so it's going to apply to the same database rather than what we did in V3 to V4, where you had to have two separate databases. So that was a technical constraint that we identified for Strapi Cloud, and that we're applying to the community side too. I accidentally skipped over a question, so I'm going to go back to it. Is there an easy way to see the differences between publish and draft? This was raised by Bogey, but then Webist and Bobby both asked about the ability to see a diff of the changes.
Yeah, so, oh, sorry.
No, go. I forgot you were here, sorry.
Maybe you will give the technical explanation side of it, but like for now, it's not planned in the MVP, but clearly it's the number one thing we will have like in the next steps. So hopefully it will be, because it's something that have been requested a lot of time, and so hopefully it will happen like not so long after the release, depending on how big it is to implement. But yeah, it's not planned for the MVP, but we have it in mind.
On that point, for the diff, I wouldn't expect to see like a new piece of UI or another tab once you're comparing the two. Just coloring the fields to indicate that that's the one that's changed between the two would be enough for me and most content editors.
Yeah, like what I have in mind for now is like an icon that shows this, or just an outline from a different color.
Yeah,
but we have
what comes to mind since he's in this call, Boaz's config sync plugin also had a diff view model that I think was pretty interesting. Eventually, I think we could probably have both, where you have a simplistic one for non-technicals and a more technical piece, but I think we'll probably explore that more in the future. Cool, moving on. We've got about 4 more questions and we got about 4 more minutes. So if we don't answer your questions here, I have a list of all of these. We'll try to answer them and add them and share them later. So will the syntax of controllers, services, etc. change for users that have tons of custom code? Was asked by Bobby.
I guess you don't want to migrate that code. No, the idea is that we will support. We plan to actually offer I'll call it an improved way to create custom code eventually, but we want to keep the backward compatibility. So you should be safe on that side.
Gotcha. Yeah, that was just a pain in V4. There was we have a lot of custom controllers and services for what we do. So migrating all of that to kind of the new format and all of the queries updated and everything. So
yeah, so I can add the precision because the controllers or the core services, those kind of things, the structure will be the same, like customizing them will be the same. One of the big changes in internal entity service API.
Great question. Because you guys are deprecating the entity service, right? And making a new documentation service.
Yes, exactly.
So let's break all current plugins. That use entity service.
Break all the current plugins is what you asked. Yes. So we'll try to see if we can keep the old name as a shortcut to the new API. If there is a way to keep that around and just deprecate it, we'll do it. That might be possible, but I wouldn't say it's going to be the best case scenario, honestly. What we want to provide is a CodeMed approach. The document service API, the way we are going to implement it, is fairly similar to the anti-service one in terms of the function calls. We try to think about that, but obviously there will be breaking changes. Like we can't promise to not make breaking changes, or otherwise we just wouldn't have any new features. So there will be a migration cost on that part for sure.
Like one immediate thing that comes to mind that Alex mentioned earlier is we're going to be changing the ID type. So by default, it's going to be, I don't know if we decide if it was nano ID or basically some string-based ID syntax instead of an auto incremental integer. CUID, that's it. How will the I18N be enhanced? Will it fix the current issues related to relations? Was asked by Lewis.
I don't know exactly which issue you refer to. So I'm not sure I can pronounce if it's on the relation side, wanting to have synchronized relations. Maybe it's this one.
Yeah.
That's the one that comes to mind. Okay. Yeah. So the way we manage relations will allow having those relations synchronized, whereas it's not the case at the moment. So that's something we want to allow with V5.
Adding to that, if did we share context about the new document system in V5 in one of the RFCs?
There is a document service RFC.
Yeah. Okay. So basically, Lewis, the relations are going to be attached to the document, and a document contains all of the entities, the locales, the draft and published versions, etc. So we're not directly linking the relationships between the entities. We're linking it to its parent document instead. So the issues that you would have hit in V4 should be resolved.
To give more details, like technically speaking, they will actually be entities to entities in a way, but we manage all the synchronization for you.
The rich text editor, will it include files and videos attachments? I don't know if you're referring to the existing one or the blocks editor, Lewis. Okay. We'll skip over that one and come back to it. Will there be an external API for handling draft, to-dos, comments, etc. from Bobby?
To-dos and comments is not a feature yet, but Content API will have a way to manage drafts and published. I mean, like publication mostly, and unpublication eventually. Those would be things that wasn't in V4 that will appear in V5.
Cool, and that's all the questions I had noted down, but I think we've probably answered some in the chat. Last minute call out for questions. Anybody got any?
Do you think to move towards monorepositories with Strapi instances? Like, for instance, currently we use Turbo, and we have basically all the plugins we developed for the project in like separate folders, not inside the Strapi. And with this types generation, we can kind of provide types for the front end. Is there anything planned on this front, like a project setups, or we should just do a community template with the Strapi inside monorepository?
We don't have anything planned per se. Yeah, except providing an example of how you would set up Strapi in a monorepo. I mean, CodeAdvisor is done this way. We have the front end and the back end of an app. So I guess that's an example, but it's not like it doesn't contain plugins, for example. I don't think that's something we plan to do yet, but it could be something for our DevRels/marketing team whenever they have time. But I don't think it's on the map for now, at least.
All right.
Bogey mentioned too, it doesn't look like the document service API got pushed into the public RFCs. I'll check on that internally and see if we can publish that one. It's more or less already decided as far as I'm aware, but I think we have an internal one.
Yeah, my bad. It's the database one. Sorry.
Yeah.
That's my bad.
But I'll check internally and see if we can push that one out. So cool. Well, thank you, everyone. Just note, we plan on doing one of these a month. Some of you might get included in the next call, but we're going to try to pull from everyone who requested to sign up from this. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Have a good day, everyone. And
Thanks,
if
guys.
anyone else has any questions, feel free to share them in the V5 Discord channel, and I'll relay them through the team.
I have one more quick question, actually. We were talking earlier. We were talking earlier about plugins, not about plugins, about custom fields and relations. Why are they actually not supported? Because it's only custom UI. The backend is already be supported. So why don't we support like custom fields of relations? And never understood. But yeah.
Most likely technical complexity, but
I don't think so.
Yeah.
But yeah.
It's just a matter of what kind of API
Yeah.
you provide with a custom field on a relation, because the point of the relation is being able to fetch it, those kind of things. So there are also like permissions management. That's something to consider. I mean, that could exist. I don't have like a use case that comes to mind, but make a feature request for sure. If you have like good examples to share, we'll take into consideration.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good one.
Bye-bye. Ciao.
Bye.
Cheers.